Angananga. I wonder who the true old school enjoyers will recognize that. So now we are speedrunning installation of Alpine 3.20.2.
Meow 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 meow.
So this video was recorded on August 20th in the year 2024, and apparently I like turtles. This was a live stream, so I have both of my followers on there, and you can see text for when I'm typing to the live stream chat. So now the goal here is to install Alpine Linux. I believe this is going into a virt manager. I believe it's libvirt virtual manager. Hi past me, Craft Systems. We're installing it into a VM, and then we'll install a graphical environment, basically to show a browser or other things. The purpose of the VM is for examples or live streaming, so that I have a isolated environment for everything I need when I'm doing a stream. And so there we go, going to install Alpine Linux 3.20.2 now. And what you will see in this speed run that it was just a regular install, but when you install Alpine Linux, it feels like a speedrun. You know, you just run the setup-alpine command, which is just a bash script, and it asks you pretty reasonable questions. You know, your language or keyboard key map, which it would be great if it was defaulted to US. I'm guessing a large percentage of users use that, so that would be great. That was something that was updated in Alpine. I guess somebody could submit a ticket to Alpine Linux in their GitLab, or just make the changes in the script and then propose a change. I don't know what the more formal or appropriate thing to do would be. But yeah, US for the keyboard and the language. The host name, default is fine, localhost, you can always change that later. That's no problem. The one thing that is better to get right the first time is absolutely the language and key map. Because if it's not the right one, man, you are going to have a blast trying to figure out the Enigma code that is the wrong key map on the wrong keyboard, or maybe it's the right key map on the wrong keyboard. And then it's asking about our network interface, which is usually, I find the defaults are fine, except when it comes to if you have a wireless adapter, which it would be like WLAN 0 or something like that. And it's odd because it will still ask you, do you want to run DHCP on ETH0? And when you start up Alpine, it will sit there and try to pull something on ETH0, even though it may or may not exist. Yeah, when I installed it on, and this will be in a later video, when I installed it on a Sony VIO-P, it showed ETH0, and I'm not certain why. Was there hardware on there for Ethernet? But maybe that's what it still shows up even though the dongle isn't connected. Anyways, before this goes too far, it asks you to set a password or a key for the root user account, the primary user account. And then it asks you for your time zone. UTC as a default, completely fine. You can always change that later. And then the proxy, this is a network thing. If you don't know if you need a proxy, you probably don't. Or if your network's not working, maybe you do need a proxy, but it's unlikely. And then the APK mirror, which is basically the mirror of where you're going to be downloading things from Alpine. I always leave this to default. I've used the selector where it tries to find the fastest before, and then I used it, and then that repo didn't have a lot of the things that it needed. That repo was missing files. So maybe there's an opportunity there for Alpine. I don't know if they do any sort of scanning for mirrors to confirm that all the files exist on these mirrors that would be expected by Alpine. And just briefly, I wanted to note, if you've ever installed a Microsoft operating system or Apple operating system by hand recently, you'll know those can take literally hours to do. And right now we're just doing Alpine, and we'll see how many seconds to minutes it takes to install the full operating system. So since then, I've just always gone back to using one. And then it's asking you if you want to set up a user, an additional regular user account, which is fine. And then I'm going to actually have to rewind just a little bit because I am rambling slightly or majorly too much.
Biggest Drengus.
Yeah, so for the user, it asks you for the username, password. These are all standard. I do not provide an SSH key, and ask which SSH server. I just default OpenSSH is fine. I don't know what the differences are with Dropbear. I would love to know if it's more beneficial to run Dropbear, but I just use the default in this case because it seems sane. And then you pick your disk. In this case, it tells you VDA is an option. I use VDA. It says 10.7 gigs. Sorry about this speedrun. I'm actually having to like rewind and pause it to see what I'm doing because I'd like to explain this to show like it might feel complicated, but it's not super complicated. Like a graphical installer makes this seem a little bit easier because it has like graphical representations, which for like a visual person might be more helpful. But I find the text even shorter and better than installing using the graphical installer that comes with Debian. Debian is just a horrific experience trying to install. I feel like it's one of those ones where it uses that's like a terminal user interface, and they ask you significantly more questions that are necessary for most basic installs. I feel like there should be like an extended installer if you need to do things like setting a proxy. I feel like this is something that shouldn't be in the base installer for Alpine. If you need a proxy, there should be like a extended edition or network edition or something like that. Like if you need wireless support, I feel like it should be in like an extended edition, like stuff like that. Or maybe Wi-Fi support should be built into the standard one. I know you kind of have to weigh these in with an installer. Do you make it more basic and faster and simpler for people, or do you make it add more options, which makes it more complicated for your basic user? So I feel like slimming down the standard installer is a good thing. If you need to do something special, then that's when it makes sense to have an additional installer. And that could be something as simple as, instead of just setup-alpine, like setup-alpine-advanced or something like that. Something where most users who won't need it are never going to look there, you know? But people who do need it know, oh, well, I just add this to it, and then we get the advanced script for installing. So yeah, we pick the disks, we tell it. What do we tell it? I'm trying to see. It looks like we tell sys. Yeah, just a standard sys layout for the partition on the disk, like the disk layout, just a standard sys. I think if you are using this personally, you should go with crypt so that you have an encrypted disk. And then once you pick crypt, you will pick sys as the layout on top of that encrypted layer. So in our speedrun that I so conveniently paused, which will throw off our results, I picked the disk and tell it, yes, we're gonna erase it. We're gonna blow it right out of the water.
Blow him out of the water, Dad!
And we're gonna put Alpine on it because that's what we're doing today.
Daddy's handling this, it's okay.
And so, yeah, the install, as you saw, it takes seconds to do. Whereas if you're installing something like, and I asked it to reboot so we can boot into our install, which, as you can see, is pretty quick, even though they're still doing serial boot process. It's not in parallel by default, which is unfortunate, very unfortunate. But yeah, we're ready to log in. It's installed. It's done. You know, this might seem complex, but it's not. I think if they simplified it a little bit more, maybe even doing a terminal UI for their installer might even be more appealing for some people. And then the first thing I do when I get into Alpine is I try to run an update. I run an update, but I think 3.20.2 had just come out at this point, or it wasn't that long off. So when I run an update, boom, it's done. And from here, now that we're done with the speed run of installing Alpine Linux, what we're going to do is, I believe we're going to put a graphical environment so that we can look at a browser. And what we're going to use is Sway. And this is how easy it is to set up a graphical user environment in Alpine. You have to do it as root, so you run the do as command. Some people might be more familiar with sudo, so you run do as and then setup-desktop, and then as an argument, you can pass it something like sway or no. When you just run that script, it'll ask you, what do you want to install? In this case, sway. And so we tell it sway, and it's done already. Sway's installed. So if we type sway, oh, you know I'm rebooting? I'm checking to see if there is a display manager that also got installed. So what we'll see now is it going to prompt login to sway, or is it just standard TTY login? And as we can see, TTY. So we'll log in again as our user account, and then we'll run the sway command to launch our graphical environment. This might feel like you're hacking the Gibson doing this.
Come on, explode out of there. Stop the charade.
Which I totally understand, you know. The Gibson doesn't want to be hacked. Does it not want to be hacked? Who knows? So now that we're in sway, if you type the key combination special, the special key, or Windows key, or Mac key, you know, the special key, plus enter, you press those both at the same time, boom, you get the foot terminal. And then you can run any command you want, just like you were at a TTY. In this case, what we ran was Firefox. I believe they install Firefox with Sway. I really wish they didn't, but they do. Here, now you get to see the problems. I'm sorry, I feel like there was a track I was on and I got off of it. I prefer not running Chrome. I also prefer not running Firefox. But between the two, I'm going to go with Firefox. The only other options we have now is Ladybird. And I mean, I guess you could use Falcon, but Falcon could use better like attachments or ad blocking. The main thing is ad block, which as you can see, when I go into Firefox, the very first thing I do is add on uBlock Origin. If the NSA is saying, hey, you're going to get hacked if you don't use an ad blocker, then it's probably safe to say you should probably use an ad blocker, unless the NSA is using the ad blocker as a backdoor. Who knows? Who knows? In any case, we get the ad blocker on, and then the second thing we install as an add-on, or for me in any case, is Dark Reader, because you don't want to get flashbanged unless you're into that. So we add the Dark Reader and the Dark Reader add-on, uBlock Origin add-on, and then the third thing I go through, and this is every time I install Firefox, which is like regularly. And this sort of shows you like how many missed opportunities there are in Firefox. Why don't they have a dark mode? You know, why don't they offer ad blocking built in? Clearly, people want it. And clearly that's a reason that people are moving off of Chrome onto Firefox now that Google's trying to block ad blocking through Chrome. So this is another terrible thing about Firefox that I have to go through. Every time I have to go through every single setting. I look at every single setting and set them appropriately. And the reasoning is because, one, they took the time to build telemetry, and two, they set it opt-in by default, which is the absolute worst thing you can do. I think these are the two main reasons that I am not a fan of Firefox, other than Google pays for it to exist. There's no incentive for the Mozilla people to improve Firefox if Google is paying them. But it sounds like with the whole monopoly thing going on, maybe it sounds like Google might not be paying for Firefox anymore, in which case you're going to get a bunch of advertisings in browser, is my guess is what they're going to do. They're going to try to go the advertising route. And it makes sense. If it's a sinking boat, you want to be mindful of where you're asking for handouts from. And so they're going to go the Google route. Oh, if it worked for Google, it should work for us here at Mozilla. Let's just put ads on everything. Who doesn't like ads? And so, yes, the first thing we installed was an ad blocker. And at this point, what we're going through is, so that keyboard shortcut I mentioned, I believe they're called keybinds. Yeah, keybinds. So that's special key plus enter will launch your terminal. But there is another way where you can bring up a menu, sort of like in the Microsoft world, where you hit like Windows R and you bring up a little prompt where you can enter the command you want to run or the application you want to launch. What I'm doing here is trying to see, is there a keybind to launch apps by default in Sway? I'm by no means any sort of Sway expert. And so what I'm looking through here in Firefox is, and this was a live stream because I was hoping, you know, if there was like someone more experienced with Sway, they might be able to give me some advice maybe and like options. What I typically do is I don't install any additional launcher. I launch the foot terminal, and then whatever application I want to launch, I'll launch it with an ampersand at the end of the command, and that will launch it in the background is what they call it. But what that means is that you can then close the terminal that you launched it from, and the application will continue to run. So that's typically what I do, but I know there's different options. Normally what I'm used to is if you press special and spacebar, I think that's how it works on an Apple world. If you do that, then it will launch application launcher, and then you type in the command you want. I feel like I installed one that was decent, but for whatever reason, the key combination didn't work, like special space. It was like special shift space. And here's where I find in the Arch wiki documentation that W menu is the default launcher application, but it appears that Alpine is not either installing it with W menu, or if they are installing W menu, the key combination isn't, or key mapping, keybind, whatever it's called, is not also getting configured. Yeah, I can totally understand why people would not want to do any of this. That's totally reasonable. But the thing is, one, you find examples like this where like maybe the launcher doesn't exist or isn't being installed, or maybe it isn't being installed but it's not being configured. You can open a ticket with Alpine Linux on their GitLab repository, that's where all the code lives, and say like, hey, like this isn't launching, how do you launch this? And hopefully someone will go in and fix that. I feel like I have just slightly more experience than that. So I will go and try and figure out and understand, well, what do we have? What are we missing? What do we need? And then I will probably just go in, since it's just shell scripts, this is no problem for me to go in and say, hey, this isn't getting installed. In this case, I don't think I did because probably I was live streaming and I was donezo for the day. So I don't know if I did or didn't create a ticket in this case, but if anybody would like to, everyone else that runs an open source operating system like Alpine Linux will benefit from it. Your good deed will help everyone else. So something like this exists in the open source world. You do not get this in a closed source world. In a closed source world, you'd email them, hey, there's no launcher. And they'd be like, yeah, can you give us the last four of your social security number? Can you send us screenshots of the launcher that doesn't exist? I mean, you're going to get that. And people are paid to do that. And, if English isn't their first language, then, there's another layer of complexity. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It seems common for US proprietary companies to, what do they like to do? Layoffs. Who do they like to hire? H-1B visas. So there is no shortage of technical talent. They're constantly being laid off. And if they're not like the cream of the crop, I feel like that's not what matters most of the time. What matters is the opportunity to support your community in growing. So enough of that rant. But here's an example of where I used Firefox and the ampersand at the end, because after that you can use Control-D or exit or quit to leave the terminal, and then you just have the application you launched. So my application launcher is terminal in this case. It would be nice if I had a specific launcher so that I don't have to close the terminal manually. But maybe I can do like application, ampersand, and then semicolon, and then exit. Maybe I can do that as one command instead of a launcher, and that would be one less thing to install. If somebody likes to jump through hoops that are on fire, you let them do that. Are you the flaming hoop police? So I think at this point, I'm trying to figure out what's the deal with keybinds, where are they stored, and all this is additional. The speedrun ended a long time ago. This is more of like configuring an environment where my expectations were that they were pre-configured. In this case, they're not. But I will say Sway was just added to Alpine in 3.20.0, and it was broken. I think they fixed it in 3.20.1. I like submitted things, and then they were like, yeah, we're going to dump your code, but use it and submit it ourselves. I'm not a big fan of that, but whatevs. In this case, I don't care because they did a bunch of additional stuff. Maybe, I don't know. In this case, I didn't really care that much because it wasn't something new. It was like fixing something that was broken as opposed to creating a new thing, which they like to steal in Redux. So if you want a community that will snipe any contributions you have, then there's Redux for you. But in Alpine, I haven't experienced that in any major way yet. Yeah, what am I looking for? Bind. So I'm trying to figure out what config file has the binds. Is there one in my local home directory? Is there one in Etsy? This is what I'm trying to figure out, is if this configuration file exists, and if it does, is it in the place where Sway expects it? Yeah, this is sort of like sleuthing, I guess. I don't know if anybody would call this hacking. I don't feel like it is, but this is just doing research into, well, why do I not have these keybinds? Why do I have the start enter, but not other keybinds? So I'm trying to figure out if this configuration exists somewhere. I'm assuming it does because that one keybind worked. Where does it exist? Is it in the right place? So just trying to figure these things out, like lining up all the holes in the Swiss cheese. And then I remember, oh, hey, I started configuring Firefox and I didn't get that far. See, and this is interesting. So they have a dark theme, website appearance, but it doesn't apply to the actual browser. As you can see, it's still that creamy white color. If you enable dark mode for websites, to me, I would think you would also want to set dark mode as the theme for the window, or is that not handled by Firefox for some reason? This is another one of those things to go and research. It's like a never-ending freaking mystery running some of these open source projects. And what you're experiencing basically is just the maturity isn't there yet. It takes time, and for whatever reason, people like to provide resistance. Or I don't know if they're just playing devil's advocate, but yeah, so now we're going through every single Firefox setting. All those tabs on the left that you see, general, home, search, privacy and security, sync, more for Mozilla, I guess I need that setting. And then on the bottom, settings, extensions and themes. I go for extensions and themes first because I feel like that is an attack vector that should be addressed first. And then here I'm setting it should be blank pages by default. It's so annoying when they're like, look at our customized dashboard. You need your Microsoft feed. Get it here now in your start menu. I don't want any of that. Look at the sponsored shortcuts. I don't want any of that. I want this to be as bare as possible unless it makes sense to add something. So there we go. Switching from Google to DuckDuckGo. I'm guessing this is what Google is actually paying Mozilla Firefox to do. Set them as the default search engine. And then you just go 2 clicks, boom, and then all that money, they collect it and you don't have to deal with it. I did not reload all my tabs, but I'm going through and telling it, yeah, don't send my data. Don't at me, bro. But yeah, some of the defaults are sane, but I feel like I have to go through and set these every time. And another thing is, who knows when a new version of Firefox comes out and they opt you into some other bullcrap. So it's like every time I install it, I go through it and I'm expecting there to be something there that wasn't there before. Yeah, all these, I can understand why it's ask me, but I go in and set it to block because in a virtual machine, I don't need it to to access my camera or microphone. This is just for visual purposes to open like a web browser. See, look at this. Send all this crap to Firefox. No. If you want my crap, pay me. Yeah, deceptive, dangerous content. Most of these are fine. HTTPS only mode should be on by default. I feel like that should be on by default. If you're going to HTTP websites, you should know to go and disable the protection. And then here we're setting our DNS over HTTPS, something I think everyone should be doing. I would like to offer DNS service over HTTPS. I don't know if that's through Wizards Anonymous or what, but that's an offering I would like to offer others, because I don't really know what some of these places are doing, like Quad9, and like I haven't looked too deeply into what they do. I do remember seeing a website that talked about this stuff, but I don't remember where it was. Or maybe I'm thinking of something else. It's a possibility, because I do know there's the one guy that checks who blocks vulnerable sites. That's not what they are. They're basically like, if you go to these websites, you're going to be compromised. And there was somebody who had gone through and made a list of like, these are the companies that are actually blocking this stuff. These are the companies that aren't. And seeing that list was an eye-opener, because you don't want to go with a DNS provider that's sending your traffic to like a known compromised site. Or this site might not be compromised, but you will be compromised if you go to the site. That's one of those things where I feel like, is that censorship? I would not call it censorship, because you're becoming compromised unknowingly. If you want to knowingly join a botnet, I'm not going to stop you. Hannah Montana isn't either. So yes, here I'm trying to figure out a public DNS server, and I tried 1.1.1 and it wasn't working for whatever reason. So what do I do? Do I use Quad9 or something? I guess we'll find out. So I'm recording this, what is it called? What does David Attenborough do? Whatever he does, I'm doing what he does, just not anywhere near as good. I'm recording this now on January 8th, the speech that you're hearing, but now I'm looking for DNS over HTTPS. You know what? This might actually be when I find that website of who blocks basically websites that will infect you. Or maybe I'm just trying to find anything that will work for now. Yeah, because 1.1.1 didn't work, 4.4.4 didn't work, trying 8.8.8.8 as a DNS server. These are all IP addresses of different public, free, as in they will monitor everywhere you're going to and sell that DNS servers. So they change when you go to google.com, it will look it up and give you the actual numbered IP address of where you're trying to go. See, and look at this. It's giving me possible security risk looking up this domain, and it's reddit.com. So this was something where I was like, what is going on here? How is this a possible security risk? Here's why. Invalid URL. But I know that's not an invalid URL. It's not a 404. It's odd. I don't know why this is happening. The only thing I can think is maybe I need to quit the browser and reopen it after entering in a DNS, but it's not clear from the settings that that's something that you may or may not need to do. And I'm guessing I'm just going to keep trying different IP addresses until something may or may not work. See, there was Quad9, 9.9.9.9, and I should try that. 9, and then what are we going to do? We're going to try again. Nope. But the thing is, I don't know if when I'm typing this in, if it's getting saved. So there we go. As you can see, it's doing something now. So Quad9 is the one that worked. I guess the others didn't offer DNS over HTTPS, so secure DNS. I don't know if I've already recorded the video on this. DNS is one of the most important things to get right when it comes to security. If you don't have that layer, you're effed. And that's when it comes to doing things on the network. If you're not doing anything with the network, then DNS isn't going to matter. If you're doing anything on the network and you're not using only IP addresses, if you're using DNS, that is one of the most important parts to get right, in my opinion. And so what are we doing here in the foot terminal? We're going through some sort of config. Oh, so this is where the key binds appear to be set. Right here, a few lines up from where the cursor is, where it says bind sim mod, which is the special key, return exec. So that means execute term. And term, in this case, is the foot terminal. See, there we go. So see how on the top here, we're entering applications? I think what I did was, so I'm going to rewind just a little bit because I think I found the actual keybind, and that was the file. We're doing this a little quickly here, and this is in real time, so it's not sped up. So it's Etsy sway config is where our keybinds are set. And then, so there's keybinds in the comment. And what I'm looking for is, see their menu, and the bind is D, special D. Everybody loves a special D to execute our launcher or menu is what the variable is. The $ menu means that's a variable. And inside that variable is the path to the launcher, which I think might be B menu. But yeah, so here I'm executing it and then I'm pressing special D. And that's when you'll see in the very top, there you go. It says X Wayland or whatever. Then you can enter Firefox. It will launch your app. So now I'm doing that instead of opening a terminal, launching the app, closing the terminal. The launcher is sort of a one command. It's like a one-shot terminal. And so once you've shoot your shot, then, thanks you for telling me to go to Facebook, where they no longer do fact checking for misinformation. Thanks, Mr. Z. I'm looking for recommended addresses. I don't want that crap showing up in my bar in case I accidentally fat finger and end up on that F site. You know, you don't want to fat finger to F. I'm doing a once over and trying to figure out where it's recommending me these websites. I think it's right there, show search suggestions, address bar. Yeah, so I'm turning up like this address bar suggestions. I would like based on browsing history is fine, but in this case I turned it off. Yeah, and then turning off show search suggestions. I mean, I think this is fine for someone who's new to the internet and they don't know where to go or how to get there. Then those settings might be good, but I feel like what percentage of internet users fall into that category? Yeah, so this is the B menu thing. If you press special D, then you'll get the special D. And so I'm wondering if I'm trying to go in and change special D to special space, because that's what I'm used to. Maybe I just need to get used to the special D. Okay, so what I did was copied and pasted it. If you DD, it will like copy it into your clipboard, and then if you do escape P and VI, I believe it will paste it. See, so now I said it twice, and I'm wondering, will this work? Won't this work? If I press special D, will that still work? If I press special space, will that also work? Or does it only take one? I feel like it shouldn't, but... And I'm giving it the old-fashioned reboot. At this point, I'm not certain why I'm doing a reboot, but I am... And at this point, I did not install a login manager because there might be times where I just want to get into a terminal or a TTY. I log in as me and then I edit rc.conf. My guess, if I'm going to rc.conf, I'm setting it to parallel the boot up so that it's faster and I don't have to sit here wasting my time. Yeah, see, so RC parallel, it's the very first option in the config file. You change it from no to yes, and then everything is better. And I submitted a ticket in the Alpine GitHub saying, hey, can we set this to parallel? Is there a reason not to set it to parallel? And I got the same sort of generic, it sounded like misinformation. It breaks some stuff. Okay, what stuff does it break? That's the important part. Don't just, shit on the floor and leave it there. Clean up after yourself. Or maybe don't shit on the floor in the first place. Yeah, we're going through our keybinds. And I think at this point, I'm looking through them just to understand what the defaults are, because I'm not a long-time Sway user. And I will say I'm open to using any other Wayland desktop environment. Hopefully, Cosmic doesn't get wrecked. It's it's written in Rust and it's a desktop environment, so it will be first. It will be the first, I'm guessing. Most things are going to switch over to Cosmic once it's released. To me, it makes sense. To someone on Mint or MX or I forget what the Bazite, people who use these things, they're going to tell you that Cosmic is trash. That's fine. They can use whatever they want to use, What's interesting is this error on top. Oh, so overwrite binding. So there's something that I broke, but I don't understand what I broke by adding those two lines. Or the space. I'm guessing there's another keybind that's using space as a keybind, because it says mod 4. There are errors in your config file. Maybe a Sway expert can come in here and tell me, no, yeah, it's because I had the space. So once I take that out, if I do the reload Sway, it should go away. That error message. Yeah, so my guess is something else was using space and I wasn't searching that config file to see what was using the space. I was just sending it. Or maybe space is reserved for some reason. And I think what I end up doing is shift space is what I probably end up looking for now. Is like, how do I add shift? And then I don't know why I didn't just see if something else was using shift in the config file. Or maybe... this is the end. This is the end. This is Red Rock. This is the end. Is that what they say? I'm wondering if whoever gets the very first word out of my mouth in this video will get that one also. So this do has power off now. You can see it's a little funky the way the parallel output is for OpenRC. It's a little bit funky. So hopefully they fix that, but in order to fix that, more people should be using it, which is another reason to default to parallel. I understand in mission critical situations setting it to serial, like changing it from parallel to serial. I don't understand the reasoning behind not having it parallel by default, having it serial by default, because when you install Alpine fresh, you can set it up however you want. I think by default, it should be parallel. For most people, that's going to be helpful. Someone said they didn't want parallel to go in, which would save, hundreds or thousands or millions of man hours per year by booting faster. Their counter argument to that was the line doesn't wrap properly. I'm totally right there with you. It doesn't look pretty, but there's an opportunity to go and open this up with OpenRC and say, hey, the line isn't wrapping properly. And then you have an opportunity to solve that. But you can't solve all the thousands and millions of man hours that have been removed from humanity because it's set to serial. So that's my argument. I feel like I don't want to go that approach when interacting in tickets. It's better to just document the hard facts and stick to whatever their goal is, whatever they're trying to achieve, which is to make it pretty. I think that's a side point that's distracting from the main point of this should be parallel. In my opinion, it should be parallel default with a install. When you change this, as far as I'm aware, if you upgrade from an old version like 3.20 to 3.21, if you do that upgrade, it should not be changing your rc.conf, your /etsy/rc.conf. That should not be changed in an upgrade, as far as I'm aware. In which case, if you have a system and it only works in serial mode for your startup, it should continue to work in serial mode. But on a new installation, if you see parallel and something's not working, you might have to go and switch it back to serial. So I think the cost outweighs the benefits in setting this to parallel. But if you're in their GitLab, you can find this ticket by me, I guess. I'm on the fence on whether or not I should actually include that in this video or not. But there you go. Speedrunning Alpine Linux. We had a Hongananga, and then we got our Sway desktop environment, which was super simple to install one command. And then after that was basically configuration inside of Sway, our keybinds, which is part of using a window manager, is learning how to use your keyboard for keybinds for navigation. And then after that was Firefox, a terrible browser, but it's the best we have right now because it's like the reds versus blues. You give them a really shitty blue option if you want them to pick the red option, And this is a case where the red option is that Firefox. I don't know, but they do like to make questionable decisions. So that's going to be it for today. I guess since this is the first video for 2025, or it might be the second if the best of comes out first, maybe I'll work on that next. I will say there's a lot in the pipeline. I've been sketching out the outlines of what Wizards Anonymous it can do, and I think people might get interested in some of the space travel stuff. They might be interested in participating in that, but of course it's going to be small scale to start with. The space travel is not going to be able to carry the mass of a human, but space travel nonetheless, it will be stepping stones. I already have membership videos, but I don't have on the censorship platform, the YT platform, I don't have their required number of subscribers, which is the requirement to have memberships on their platform. I'm guessing I'm going to have to set up my own platform where I don't have that restriction to offer members videos because some of this content is just too juicy to be public, basically. I feel like some of my previous videos might seem a little too juicy, but they pale in comparison, basically. So if you want the good videos, I don't know how to do them other than membership only. I don't think they should be just general public. So this is all part of Wizards Anonymous. It's all in the outline. I have some ideas for platforms. I would love to hear if anyone has any experience or suggestions in running their own. I know a couple people that have done this now. I know 2, as of last year, people who run their own platform so that they can offer something that isn't censored for something basic. Not anything illegal by any means. The red platform, YT platform, they just block it. So there's a lot coming up. I think it's really all based around the community because y'all are a bunch of and that's my favorite kind of person. So I'll see you next time. And don't forget to scrimble. To be certain.
Come and give me a hand. I already have.
And you might be asking yourself, why would I scrimble to a bunch of wizards? And it's because they are anonymous and because you will get those juicy membership videos sooner. They're already uploaded on the platform. YT won't let me show them until there's 500 scrimbles. So scrimble on if you want to get that juice. The juice.
And who didn't believe I could do it? Who doubted me? Someone here does not belong. Stranger amongst the loyal, I will weed you out. You? Yeah. I did. Yes, you made a boo-boo. The boo box. No, the boo box.